Okay, so imagine this. You're all set to stream that new show everyone's talking about,
Yeah.
and bam, the internet's out.
Oh, no.
Your phone,
Yeah.
no signal TV, just static. Even your GPS has gone haywire.
Wow.
That sounds like a nightmare, right?
Yeah, it does.
Well, this scenario might be closer to reality than you think.
Really?
Scientists are raising the alarm about space debris and something called the Kessler Syndrome.
The Kessler Syndrome.
Yeah, have you heard of this?
I have, yeah.
What is that all about?
Well, it's not just science fiction, it's a genuine concern. We're talking about collisions between pieces of space junk, creating even more debris, eventually turning Earth's orbit into, well, a chaotic mess.
So like a demolition derby, but with satellites.
Exactly, and at crazy speeds, like 17,000 miles per hour.
That's a scary thought.
It is.
So just how crowded is it up there?
Yeah.
I mean, we hear about these satellite launches all the time.
Right now, over 10,000 active satellites are orbiting our planet.
10,000?
Over 10,000, yeah. And to put that into perspective, Elon Musk's Starlink project, just that alone, accounts for about 6,800 of those, with plans to launch tens of thousands more.
So are we talking just intact satellites? Or is there other junk up there too?
Oh, it's not just satellites. The European Space Agency estimates there are about 40,500 pieces of trackable debris larger than 10 centimeters. And that's just what we can see. Millions, maybe even billions of smaller pieces are just too small to track.
So it's like an invisible minefield in space.
Yeah, very good analogy.
And with everything moving that fast, even a tiny piece could cause some serious damage.
Absolutely. Even a 1 centimeter piece of debris hitting a satellite at orbital velocity, that carries the same energy as a bowling ball traveling at 300 miles per hour.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So how worried should we be about this Kessler syndrome? Is it just a hypothetical threat, or are we already seeing some signs of it?
Well, the threat is real, and it's increasing daily. Satellite operators are already getting about 1,000 collision warnings each day, and that's just for the debris we can track. We've even had some close calls.
You mean actual collisions?
Yes, even full-blown collisions. In 2009, a defunct Russian satellite crashed into a U.S. communications satellite.
Oh.
And that single event created almost 2,000 trackable debris fragments, adding to the already crowded environment.
And each of those fragments can then go on to create more debris if it hits something else.
Precisely. And unfortunately, these incidents aren't isolated. In 2021, Russia conducted an anti-satellite missile test, and that generated over 1,500 pieces of trackable debris, which just further fueled the problem.
So this isn't some far-off threat. It's happening now.
Right.
And we haven't even talked about the consequences.
Yeah.
What are the potential impacts if this space debris problem continues to escalate?
Well, first and foremost, we could lose the satellites we rely on for daily life, things like communication systems, GPS, weather forecasting, even banking and financial transactions. All these depend on satellites. A cascade of collisions could disrupt, even cripple, these vital services. That would lead to widespread chaos and economic turmoil.
So it's not just about losing Netflix. It's about potentially losing critical infrastructure.
Exactly. And it goes beyond disrupting our daily lives. Space exploration itself could be in jeopardy. Imagine trying to launch a mission to the moon or Mars through a minefield of debris. It would be incredibly risky, if not impossible.
So the future of space exploration could be at risk because of what we've done in the past.
It is a sobering thought, isn't it? The very technology that lets us explore space could become our biggest obstacle.
It's a lot to think about.
It is. Welcome back.
All right, so in part one, we really dug into that alarming reality of the Kessler Syndrome.
Right.
It's not just a sci-fi thing. It's a real danger.
It is.
One that could really cripple our space infrastructure and hinder, future exploration and all of that. You mentioned there's hope, though.
There is.
So what kind of solutions are we looking at to tackle this space junk issue?
Well, we need to consider two main approaches. First, preventing any more debris from being created.
Okay.
So that means stricter regulations on satellite launches, end-of-life disposal.
Right. So we need to make sure that whoever's putting stuff up there is responsible for cleaning up.
Exactly. We need clear guidelines for things like satellite design, lifespan, deorbiting procedures, and better tracking systems to monitor debris, predict those potential collisions.
That makes sense. But what about all the millions of pieces of debris that are already up there? What do we do about those?
That's where the second approach comes in, active debris removal.
Okay.
We're talking about developing and deploying technologies that can actually capture and remove that debris from orbit.
So like space garbage trucks, essentially.
Well, not exactly trucks, but the concept is similar.
Okay.
There are several different technologies being explored, each with its own advantages and challenges.
So what are some of the most promising solutions that are on the table right now?
Well, one idea is to use robotic arms to grab onto those large pieces of debris and either deorbit them, bring them back down to Earth, or move them to a less congested area of space.
Right.
And the European Space Agency, they're planning to launch a mission called Clear Space 1 in 2026
Oh, wow.
to test this concept.
Okay, interesting. Are there any less, I guess, hands-on approaches being considered?
Absolutely. Another interesting concept involves using nets or tethers to capture that debris.
Okay.
Imagine a giant net deployed in space, ensnaring debris, and then either dragging it down into the atmosphere to burn up or towing it to a disposal orbit.
That's a pretty cool visual.
Yeah.
But what about all those millions of tiny pieces, the ones too small to even track?
Right.
Can we really catch all of those with nets?
For the smaller stuff, we're looking at even more futuristic technologies, like using powerful lasers to nudge debris out of orbit.
Wait, lasers? Like Star Wars?
Not quite weaponized lasers, but the principle is similar.
Yeah.
The idea is to use a ground-based laser to ablate a small amount of material from the debris, which creates a tiny bit of thrust that can actually change its trajectory enough to send it plummeting back into the atmosphere.
Interesting. So we have robotic arms, nets, and lasers. Seems like we're really trying everything to tackle this problem.
We have to. The stakes are really high.
Right.
But even with all these technological advancements, we need to address another crucial element, international cooperation.
Right. Space is a shared resource, so how do we get all the different countries with their different interests to agree on a solution?
It's definitely a challenge, especially with all the geopolitical tensions we're seeing in other areas.
Yeah.
But there are some encouraging signs. The United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, or UNOSA.
UNOSA.
Yeah, they've been working for years to develop guidelines for the long-term sustainability of outer space activities.
So the UN is taking the lead on space sustainability. What kind of guidelines are we talking about?
They cover a range of issues, from debris mitigation, responsible satellite operations, to sharing space situational awareness data.
So it's about getting everyone on the same page.
Right, working together to prevent further damage to the space environment.
That sounds like a step in the right direction.
It is, but there are still many hurdles to overcome.
Like what?
We need to make sure those guidelines actually have teeth.
Right.
Meaning there are consequences for countries that don't comply.
Oh, okay.
We also need to figure out liability.
Yeah.
What if a debris removal mission goes wrong and causes damage?
Right. Who's responsible?
Exactly.
So it seems like solving the space debris problem isn't just about technology. It's also about diplomacy and international law.
Exactly. It requires a multifaceted approach, innovative technologies, effective regulations, global cooperation. But there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to talk about.
Okay.
The economic aspect.
All right, because all of this can't be cheap.
No, it's not. Developing and deploying all these solutions is expensive.
Yeah.
So the question is, who's going to pay for all of it?
That's a good question.
It's complex, and there's no easy answer. Some argue that governments should foot the bill because space infrastructure is so important for national security, economic well-being.
Yeah.
Others think the private sector should play a bigger role, especially as more and more companies are venturing into space.
So we're probably looking at a combination of public and private investment to tackle this effectively.
Most likely, yes. We also need to consider the potential economic benefits of cleaning up space.
Sure.
Because if we create a sustainable space environment, it opens up new opportunities for exploration, for research, even commercial activities.
So it's not just about mitigating risks, it's about creating new possibilities in space.
Yes, and that brings us to another important aspect of the economic equation, the ethics of space debris.
Ethics. I hadn't really considered that before. How does ethics come into play with space junk?
Well, it comes down to questions of responsibility and fairness.
Okay.
Because the countries that have contributed the most to this problem, they're not necessarily the ones that will be most affected by its consequences.
Oh, I see.
Developing countries, the ones that are just beginning to explore space, they may find their efforts hampered by the debris left behind by others.
So we need to make sure that whatever solutions we come up with are equitable.
Right.
And don't put an unfair burden on those who haven't contributed as much to the problem.
Exactly. We also need to be aware of potential unintended consequences
Right.
as we develop and deploy these technologies.
So what happens if, let's say, a debris removal mission goes wrong and creates more debris than it removes?
Exactly. Or what are the potential military applications of these technologies?
Okay, yeah, those are valid concerns.
They are.
It seems like every solution comes with its own set of challenges.
Right.
But, thinking about the average person, what can we do to help with this problem? It feels so big and kind of out of our hands.
It's easy to feel that way, but there are definitely things you can do.
Okay, like what?
First and foremost, stay informed about the issue.
Oh, yeah.
Read articles, listen to podcasts like this one.
Right.
Follow organizations that are working on solutions.
Knowledge is power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But beyond just staying informed, you can support organizations that are advocating for space sustainability through donations or volunteer your time.
Right.
And you can even contact your elected officials, urge them to support policies that promote responsible space practices.
So write to my congressman about space junk.
Exactly. Public pressure can be a powerful tool to drive change. And don't underestimate the power of your consumer choices. Support companies committed to sustainable space practices.
Right.
Ask your internet provider about their plans for deorbiting their satellites.
So we can really use our wallets to encourage better behavior.
Exactly. It all comes back to recognizing that space is not some distant, irrelevant frontier.
Right.
It's an extension of our planet, and we need to take responsibility for its well-being.
So we're back. And we've talked a lot about the Kessler Syndrome, the dangers, the challenges, but also those glimmers of hope.
Yeah, definitely.
But as we wrap up, I keep thinking about the path forward. We've painted a picture of some pretty immense challenges, technological, political, even ethical ones.
Right.
So where do we actually go from here?
Well, it really comes down to turning all this awareness into action.
Right.
We need to move beyond just recognizing the problem and actually start implementing solutions.
So let's talk about prevention first.
Okay.
What can we do to stop adding to this, cosmic junkyard?
Well, it starts with those stricter regulations we talked about on satellite launches and end-of-life procedures.
All right.
We need those binding international agreements, setting clear standards for satellite design, lifespan, debris mitigation.
So like every satellite launched has a self-destruct.
Exactly. Ensuring it safely deorbits at the end of its mission.
But getting every nation to agree on those regulations, that's going to be tough.
It is, absolutely. We need to shift the mindset from viewing space as this lawless frontier to recognizing it as a shared resource that demands responsible stewardship.
So really making those companies, those countries, accountable.
Right, for the entire life cycle of their space objects.
But even if we manage to stop creating new debris, what about all that stuff already up there?
Right.
That seems much harder to deal with.
It is a tougher challenge, but I don't think it's insurmountable.
Okay.
We need to really push forward with those active debris removal technologies we discussed.
Like the robotic arms, the nets, lasers.
Exactly. But right now, a lot of those technologies are still in the experimental phase.
Yeah.
We need to scale them up, make them more efficient, more cost-effective.
So it's kind of like we need a space-age recycling program.
Precisely.
Imagine a whole fleet of specialized spacecraft equipped with those robotic arms, nets, going around collecting this debris.
And while they're doing that, those ground-based lasers could be nudging the smaller fragments back into the atmosphere.
To burn up.
It's a cool vision, but it also sounds incredibly expensive.
It is, and that's where that combination of public and private investment is so important.
Right.
Governments need to recognize the importance of space sustainability, allocate the funding.
But the private sector has a role to play, too.
Absolutely. As space becomes more commercialized, companies need to factor in the cost of debris mitigation, removal, all of that.
So it's about making sustainability part of the space economy.
Exactly. And that's where innovation is key.
Right.
We need to encourage companies to develop new technologies, new business models that prioritize space sustainability.
So imagine companies competing to provide debris removal services.
Right. A market-driven solution to this global challenge.
It's a really interesting idea, but beyond all the tech, the economics, there's also the human element, right?
Yes,
We need
definitely.
to build a global culture of responsibility when it comes to space.
Absolutely. It's about educating future generations.
About the importance of space sustainability, instilling that sense of awe, respect for this environment beyond our planet.
Make space debris as unacceptable as, littering in a national park.
Exactly.
So shifting our perspective
Hmm.
from seeing space as this infinite frontier to a finite resource.
Right. One that we need to take care of.
And that shift needs to happen at all levels.
Yes, from individuals to policymakers to industry leaders.
We all have a role to play.
We do.
Well, as we come to the end of this Trending Quick, I'm left feeling a sense of urgency, but also a sense of hope.
I agree.
The Kessler Syndrome is a serious threat, but we do have the knowledge and tools to address it.
The key is to act decisively, to act collaboratively, and with a long-term vision.
Because the future of space exploration really depends on the choices we make today.
It does.
So to our listeners, we leave you with this final thought.
Okay.
The Kessler Syndrome isn't just a scientific problem, it's a human problem.
Right.
And it's a problem we can solve together.
Thank you for joining us for this exploration of the Kessler Syndrome.
We hope you learned something new and that you'll continue to explore this topic further.
And we hope you'll consider the role you can play in advocating for a future where humanity's journey into space is a responsible and sustainable one.